every driver's meeting, they were pointing out, look, the guys from kart, everybody's watching. We got to put on a good show. Be safe. Take the first 20, 30 laps, just get them under your belt. Don't wreck. So I woke up race day morning and I was like, all right, out of 33 guys, there's probably about 20 that are going to take it pretty easy. The other guys are going to go. And I'm like, I'm going to be one of the guys that goes.
Johnny O, Mr. America.
Been a long time,
friend,
buddy.
you, my friend, I gotta pull my piece of paper up here because when I looked up the stats, I was like, holy crap, this guy's got a long resume. Mm-hmm. So 79 career wins, 195 podiums, 35 poles, 4-time Le Mans winner, 3-time IMSA champion, 4-time World Challenge champion, Daytona 24-hour winner, and 7-time Sebring 12-hour winner. Is this all? Am I missing anything?
You're close. Sebring's actually 8. So I took the lead.
Pardon me.
Well, I think we've both been a little bit greedy over our careers. I know there's certain circuits that you dominated. And Sebring just had a really good rhythm for me, as well as Le Mans, a really long career. So in that, very blessed.
Well, what was missing at Daytona then? Like all those wins at those two tracks, one time at Daytona, what went wrong there?
Well, what happened was the split. So when ALMS and IMSA, remember it was called Grand Am for a lot of years. And most of those years were when I was racing for Corvette. And so with Corvette, we did 2001. And then I don't think Corvette, raced again at Daytona for 10, 12 years, might have even been longer until the series came back together. And so that prevented me from doing Daytona a lot. I think, I did Sebring 20 times. I did Le Mans 15 times, and I think I only did Daytona like 7 or 8. So, great race. It's funny. Our friend Tommy Kendall, I was thinking about him this weekend because I was at Daytona, and I remember him saying that he hated 24-hour races until he won one. And then when you win one, it's a pretty cool feeling.
Yeah, that's for sure. Well, I've never won one, so that's still on the bucket list. Like you, I want to get back in the car, but the problem is everybody thinks we're old now, right?
No,
but old guys can still rock and roll.
I've been watching you in the Trans Am stuff. Yeah, you haven't lost a step. It's just right now finding any opportunity, whether it's SRO or IMSA or other series. It's not an easy game right now.
Yeah. So the first time I ever came across you was in 87. There was a challenge race, Formula Atlantics in Memphis, Tennessee. And I was in F2000 at that time, and my dad rented a car from some guy, and there was this big race. And there must have been 50, 60 cars at this race from all over the place. It was East Coast, West Coast challenge. And there was there was a who's who, right? So there was Dan Marvin, Ted Prowess. I think Mark and his brothers, the Smith brothers, were there. Dean Hall, Ted Prowess, Calvin Fish. I mean, you name it. These guys were there, and I think you won the race, didn't you?
Well, I wish. We were at the end of the first. We were so quick there. We had everybody by a lot, but then I got greedy in qualifying and tagged the wall. Remember, you had to cross that drag strip.
Yeah, the drag strip.
I think I qualified 13th, and then in the race, and why'd you bring that up? I'm still angry. And
well, you had a better race than me because I qualified I think 25th to 30th, somewhere like that, and those were standing starts. And I remember we all take off down start, and at the end of the drag strip, there was this big long sweeper, and I tried to pass about 10 cars in the sweeper and crashed myself out of the race in the first corner. And it was not a fun drive home with my dad from Memphis back to Toronto. He was pretty pissed off with me.
Well, fathers give lectures. I think that's part of the
now,
game.
my dad never lectured me. He just gave me the silent treatment.
Well, that's when I knew he was even worse.
Yeah.
I think we raced up to fourth or fifth. I think R.K. Smith won it.
There's another big name. Yeah.
Yep. And Jimmy Vassar was second. That was when the Swift came out. And so really it was an unfair fight because you had RK and Jimmy in the Swift, and then Jeff Krosnoff finished third, and he had a great race. And then we got lucky because I think it was 2 weeks after that was the last race for the East Coast Series, and down at St. Petersburg. So we went down there, we got the pole, and we won it. So I had a little bit of redemption, but yeah, that the East-West shootout still bothers me.
Yeah. This podcast is brought to you by Racer and Racer.com, the leading motorsports news and information source in North America. With special thanks to trusted silver and gold trading partner and studio sponsor ITM Trading and Scottsdale-based Apex Motor Club. I'm a member there. It's a membership-only private track racing community right here in Phoenix. If you want to go racing, that's the place to be. I mean, so your path really was IndyCar bound. Like, you were open wheel guy, not a sports car guy. You really were focused on trying to get to IndyCar, which was not in those days. It was super hard to get to IndyCar because you had all these super established veterans, like you had Mario still in there, and AJ, and you had Teo Fabi and Emerson, and it was super difficult to get into IndyCar. But you did some Indy Lights. I mean, you and I raced Indy Lights against each other, but your path was always kind of an open wheel guy.
Yeah, you know what? And actually, you know what? After the Atlantic Championship in 1987, Bobby Rahal, got a hold of me. He and I went to the same university, and Bobby's 11 years, older than me. And he's like, hey, if there's, anything I can do to help you out, let me know. And at this time, this is no lie, I was living in a converted 1 or 3 car garage. This woman had made one bay into a bedroom, bathroom, and I had a microwave, out in the garage. I mean, I was so poor. And so I called Bobby, and he starts helping me, and he got me a test with Paul Stewart Racing, Jackie Stewart's team. So he arranged it through Jackie, went over, tested at Snetterton's, and the guys that were really good. So you had Mika Salo, David Coulthard, and Gilles DeFerrin, and tested against all those guys. Was the quickest, and had Bobby Rahal and Jackie Stewart making phone calls to American companies, Philip Morris, RJ Reynolds, and Budweiser, and none of them would bite. The reason being is that if they were spending money over in Europe, because I wanted to go over and run British Formula 3 with Dick Bennett's, but we couldn't get any money. And that was when Alistair McNeil got me a test with Nissan. And the test went well. I didn't get the ride, but they kept me in reserve, and they'd bring me to tests. And then I think I did my first race for Nissan at Daytona in 1990. Yeah. And then you were bouncing around in lights there, but up until 90, till you went with Nissan, I don't remember it ever being a full-time thing. You were kind of in and out, right? Yeah. I was working at Bondurant as an instructor just so I could stay fresh with my driving. And my biggest break came, Paul. I had moved to Arizona to work for Bondurant, and NPTI. This would have been in 92. NPTI was there, and they were testing, and they had Jeff Brabham, they had Ari there, and Bob Earl. And so I just went over to kiss ass and play the young driver thing. And one of the guys was like, "Hey, Brabham's got to leave early tomorrow. Do you want to fill in?" And I'm like, "Are you kidding me?" And so showed up the next day. And you'll remember that was on I think it was the West track, the one down in the little valley
Yeah,
there. I think that's
in
where you
the
actually got to test with Senna or
yeah,
whatever.
and
That same.
the one in the little bowl over there, and if it ever when it rained, it would like flood over because it was like a little water retention area over
Big
there.
time, big
Yeah,
time. And, but you know what? It was cool because, you know, back then, remember, we didn't have data. We had one button on the
yeah,
steering wheel. And so, but I could watch Jeff and see where he's braking, what gear he's using. So I got in the car and, you know, within 10 seconds, 10 laps, got within a second of them. And then from that point on, everything opened up for me with Nissan. And, unfortunately, so I was doing the GTP and the Group C testing for them. And then
yeah,
if you remember around that time, Nissan was looking at going IndyCar racing. And
yeah.
so after one of the tests, Jeff said to me, I just want to let you know, you're going to be the guy teamed with me if they pull the trigger. And then unfortunately, man, I'll tell you what, an Irishman should have been more lucky than I was. But the yen tanked. The guy that was president of Nissan at the time, who was a racing guy, had a heart attack, and they replaced him with a guy that loved golf. And so that's when NPTI, you know, went under, and then they moved me over to the GTO team.
Yeah.
So that's how I really started becoming full-time sports car guy.
Straight out of the gate, you go to Le Mans and win first try with Steve Millen, right?
Yeah, and John Morton. And dude, if you ever get the chance to run that track, it's like so next level. It's so fast. It's so fast. And you know, and when you're doing it at night and in the rain, you just get, you know, presented with so many cool challenges. And then the history of the event. It's spectacular.
So basically, right out of the gate, you're in a factory deal. I'm trying to get my head around why you made this decision, but I think I know why you made this decision is because deep down inside, you wanted to be an open wheel IndyCar driver. The split happens with CART and the IRL. You're driving the factory Nissan. You've won Le Mans, and then you decide to go in the IRL at a time when in '96 that was really the pinnacle of speed for Indy cars. Like cars, we were running 235 miles an hour in 93, 94, 95. And the split happens in 95 and you jump into the IRL in a 96 Lola. And those cars in those days, I mean, you know, they were wicked fast.
That to me was one of the best eras of IndyCar with the sound and I mean, they were beautiful. True story though. So like the first time I get in that car is at the track at Walt Disney World. And, you know, I'm pulling out of the pits, you know, and I'm going down the back straight. And my thought was, I can't believe I don't get to road race this thing. I mean,
Yeah.
I can only imagine. I'm so jealous of you because God, to rip in one of those cars had to be spectacular. And,
Well,
you know, and ovals, you know this as well as anybody, when the car is right, they're really fun. And when the car is wrong, which in my case was like 90% of the time,
it's
dude,
frightening.
it's the most miserable thing in the world. And so, you know, we're running at Indy now. When we God, when we ran that year in '96 before the start of the race, this is how tight a budget we were on. We had done 140 laps before the start. I mean,
Yeah.
that's it. And I qualified 29th on a wing and a prayer. I mean, literally every day I'm waking up being like, am I going to Methodist today? I mean, it was not comfortable there at all. And there was so much. This is funny because with the split and stuff, every driver's meeting, they were pointing out, look, the guys from CART, everybody's watching. We got to put on a good show. Be safe. Take the first 20, 30 laps, you know, just
Yeah.
get them under your belt. Don't wreck. So I woke up race day morning and I was like, all right, out of 33 guys, you know, there's probably about 20 that are going to take it pretty easy. The other guys are going to go. And I'm like, I'm going to be one of the guys that goes. And so went and got like from 29th, I think we got up to like 11th before the first pit stop. And then fuel pump failed on us.
Yeah.
And so it was game over. But I, to be honest with you, you know, I'd always thought I'd be going to Indianapolis with a shot at winning. And
Yeah.
by the way, you did win. And I know that you got to sometimes put stuff. And I like Helio. I like Helio. He's a buddy. But you did win. But I left there. I was happy to leave just because it had not been a good experience for me.
Well, and
And
you're torn too, right? Because you're a road racer at heart. You've grown up your whole life. You started in karts super young. I just saw your post the other day of your first go-kart. You grew up on the East Coast. You're racing WKA up and down all over the country, and so you're a road racer at heart. But okay, Indy cars. You're getting a chance to race Indy cars, but no road racing.
no, and only did it because I needed money. I mean, at the end of the day, and I was still racing sports cars at the time, but yeah, no, I mean, it was not a satisfying feeling, and then also, and again, I'm watching, guys like you and Jimmy and guys that I've raced against, and you guys are, getting to race what I wanted to race. And, so I just kind of, I did that, and that was also a bad time. Guys getting killed, guys getting injured. I mean,
Yeah.
the car in
Well,
90s.
in those days, I mean, the cars they were going 230 miles an hour on the ovals, and there was no safer walls then.
Nope.
There was no Hans devices. There was no headrest system like they have now, where you're buried in the car and the headrest is all the way around your head. Your head's sticking out of the car, and you have a strap on your head.
Yeah.
Maybe
You remember that?
maybe a little pad. And I went back and watched some of your highlights. You had a wreck at Vegas where you were sliding down the front straightaway on your head at 220 miles an hour.
Yeah. You know what? And that God, man, they weren't all good moments, were they? You know what's so funny about that? So Richie Hearn was leading at that time, and my strategy had been just stay on the lead lap to lap 150 and then start racing. And so Richie, I think he was running like 210s, and I was running 218. And I'm doing the math, and I'm like, I can win this thing. And that was a 96 Reynard, and the
Yeah.
lower rear wishbone pulled out and rode that thing, up to the wall, went upside down. And
I mean,
that's like
those cars in those days, Johnny, they weren't designed for, they were designed for running at Indy, low banking. They were designed for running at Milwaukee, Nazareth, places like that, low banking. And Vegas was a high bank, high G track. And I could see like the thing failed because the G loads were probably, you're going 230. I think Ari qualified at that track at like 235 or something ridiculous like that. And the G loads are probably 6 Gs in the corners.
You look at, you had Ari wrecked, Tony Stewart wrecked. I mean, there were a lot of guys wrecking that day. And so, yeah, I don't know whether you in your career ever got upside down. Sooner or later, I think we all might have. But yeah, that was pretty spectacular. And so I'm like talking to the guys while I'm upside down, and sparks in the cockpit, and yeah, crawled out in that one. That hurt my ribs a lot. So that was probably about 2-3 months, healing from that.
And then 97 rolls around, and they really dumbed the cars down. They went to this kind of big Dallara, big heavy car, normally aspirated motor. They probably took about 300 horsepower out of motors, slowed the cars way down. And to me, I called them crap wagons back in the day because they were just ugly and slow. And I'm sure that probably, you kind of hung in there in IndyCar, but it probably wasn't as satisfying as driving those, the cars that had 900 horsepower.
Not even close. And I think that year, in 97, I showed up like a lot of guys do at Indianapolis, helmet in hand, and was doing some TV work. And Scott Sharp, he wrecked twice. And so they didn't clear him. So, I get called, I get in one of Foyt's cars. Now, the year before, every day was terrifying. And the car, the track was scary. It was difficult. Then I get in Foyt's car. It's easy. I mean, it was so nice and comfortable. And I'm working with AJ. And then an oil fitting broke going into turn one, and went in feet first. Luckily, and again, we talked about the Hans. I'm right now, I got to get my neck fixed because of that wreck, because of Watkins Glen. I've had 3 or 4 big ones where my head got to the steering wheel. And so, I'm there, I'm stopped. If there's a place you want to wreck, it's Indy, because they're at you in like 2 seconds. And I'm like,
Yeah.
what happened? What happened? And I'm wondering, was that a gust of wind? Did something break or whatever? And the guy's like, you wrecked. And I'm like, I know I wrecked. You guys are having to cut me out of this thing. So yeah, once that happened, all desire, to pursue IndyCar or open wheel stuff, I was like, you know what, you can have a long career racing sports cars if you're smart.
Yeah.
So,
And then
that's
then the Chevy deal, the GM deal with Chevy comes along, and you're a road racer at heart, and then that's where your career just took off. Like from there on, the wins started just racking up.
Yeah, no, it was good. So, after the Indy stuff, I got hired by Don Panos and got teamed with Jan Magnussen, and the other car was David Brabham and Eric Bernard, all 3 Formula One guys, and then me.
Yeah.
And so that was for me really satisfying, because you always want to know, how do I fare against the best? So that was, a really, really fun time. I got to race with a French team, Dams. That's when I first started, racing. I got to race Suzuka, but then, I could see the writing on the wall, what direction Don was going with that program. And this is a true story. I called Doug Feehan, who was the program manager for Corvette at the time. And I'm like, hey, Doug, I didn't get him. I got his voicemail. Doug, this is Johnny O'Connell. You might remember me from when I used to beat up on you in the Nissan. It was kind of cheeky of me. And I'm like, hey, if your dance card isn't filled, I'd love to talk to you. And 8 hours later, he called me back with an offer to do the 4 races, to do Daytona, Sebring, Le Mans, and Petit. And we do Daytona. We win it. And like 2 weeks later, the guy that had the ride for the entire year was Chris Knife. And Chris got offered the chief steward deal for CART.
For CART, yeah.
Yeah. And so Doug's like, you want the whole deal?
Him and I didn't get along very well.
Well, you add them to the list, right? Yeah. And so
I don't have anything against Chris, but I certainly got I felt some penalties that were not deserved from him.
Yeah. Well, you know what I mean? It is
some of them I did deserve for sure, but some I didn't. But he would say, well, listen, if you're anywhere in the vicinity because you've accumulated so many other penalties, I'm holding you responsible because you're in the area.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I kind of had the same thing happen to me when I was racing World Challenge, just feeling like, you got a microscope on you, and everybody's noticing any tiny little thing. And, but yeah, so that's what got me to GM, and what a, very fortunate and, great, I had 10 years, in the Corvette. We won 41 times there. And then they moved me over to the Cadillac. And well,
really, let's back up, because I still want to talk about all the 24-hour wins before we get to World Challenge. But to sum it up with Neifel, one time I got spun out in the pit lane at Laguna, like running second or third, and Elio spun me out in the pit lane, leaving the pits, and they didn't give Elio a penalty for spinning me in the pit lane into another crew's pit box.
Yeah.
And I was so mad at him that I got out of the car and I called Neifel a circus clown on TV. I said, this guy's a referee's like a circus clown. And
yeah.
He hit me with a $50,000 fine the next day for calling him a clown on TV.
Oh man. All right. So my biggest fine was $5,000. So you're 10 times worse than I am. So yeah, but you know what? I kind of hate it. It's kind of like Formula One now, saying, watching drivers cussing and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
It's such an emotional sport. And what's unfortunate in that deal is that Chris was a driver. And so, I think you got to be able to separate the emotion from what the situation, what happens. And the other thing is, have you ever heard of an official saying, I got that wrong? You don't. They
No.
make a decision and they stick with it.
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
I know, but you know, you're going to Le Mans. You got a great team around you. You got like, Ron Fellows and the guys you drove with. They're all super super good road racers, and you guys are racking up wins at Le Mans like it's going out of style. What made Corvette so successful? Was it the preparation? Because I remember watching back in those days, and you guys seem to have whatever happened, whatever scenario could happen, you guys had a fix for whatever was. If the brakes went out, you had quick change brakes. If the rear end went out, you had a quick change rear end. I mean, you guys could move on the fly. It was like, what made them so much better than the Ferraris and the Porsches in that era?
Oh, God, I would say a lot of that, came down to Gary Pratt, and being so thorough and understanding how to really build a car to win a 24-hour race. It's really interesting because the mindset at Corvette changed after 2000. I didn't race. I raced for Panos in 2000. And at the conclusion of 2000, Feehan and a couple of representatives from GM went over and had a meeting with the ACO. And because they'd been beat by the Viper and the Celine and other guys, and their pace wasn't there. And they're like, okay, well, for 2001, we want this, configuration for wing, and we want this, restrictor and all the stuff. And the French were like, no, 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 no. You must make your car better. They didn't change the rules at all. And I think that led to them going back to Detroit and saying, okay, what do we need to do to win this race? And so really, went into 2001, my first year. I mean, that's why we won Daytona. We had a really strong bulletproof car. And then Le Mans that year, it was with Pruitt. Scott was our third guy, really solid, endurance racer. And we had a lot of success. We won that year. And I think a good part of it, that was a really rainy year, tons of rain.
Yeah.
And Goodyear at that time had an amazing wet tire, a really good tire in the wet. And so I think that worked, to our advantage. And then we were flawless. I mean, it was fuel, tires, driver change, and go. And so, and then, what it's like when it's always the most difficult getting your first win at a racetrack. But then once you've won there once, it's like, okay, I've been there. I know how to do this. And then, they just kept coming, whether it was the 3-car or the 4-car. My last win was in 2009. And I would say that's probably my favorite. I was teamed with Jan Magnuson and Antonio Garcia. And at about 10 o'clock at night, Jan got sick and he got food poisoning. So it was Antonio and I going back and forth the rest of the way, which I know it sounds a bit masochistic, but I'd always, back in the day, they did it with 2 guys. Now, the racetrack in the 60s with Mulsanne being so long and without the Porsche curves, athletically, it wasn't, in the cars. I mean, athletically, it wasn't what the cars are now. Now the cars are crazy athletic, but they've added so much to the racetrack since then. So to go the rest of the way, Antonio and I back and forth and then getting a win, that was pretty awesome.
I heard a funny story, actually, from a good friend of ours that you were getting ready to do a triple stint in the middle of the night. And one of our buddies said that he got a piece of like stinky French cheese and put it underneath your microphone, right under your nose, and he duct taped this piece of stinky cheese to your mic, and you went out and did a 3-hour stint with that stinky cheese under your nose. Is that true?
Dude, it was so funny. You're talking about Kelly Collins, who is one of my favorite people in racing. What a great guy. I had like the day before, like he'd gotten up, to get something while we were having lunch, and I just put a ton of salt on his salmon, and he took offense to that. We were just having fun. Le Mans in the spring, the allergies can be horrible. And so I can't breathe. I'm all messed up. And it was so funny. Am I allowed to use a bad word here?
Go
because,
ahead.
because Kelly kept coming up to me all day and he's like, dude, he'd sniff me and he'd be like, you smell like, and so all day long, I'm like, what are you talking about, man? Well, at the end of the day, he finally comes up to me. He's like, dude, there's this stinky cheese in your helmet. I had no idea. And, but yeah, that is a true story. That is a true story.
Did you ever get him back? Was there anything you ever did to him to get him back?
No,
For that?
I think at that point we were even.
Give me some ammo for him because I'm going to have him on the show at some point. He's going to be on.
All right. Well, I'll give that to you off camera. All right. But so in 2000, when Kelly went over, he stayed at this like 13th century chateau and had a pool, and he brought his girlfriend, who was a stripper.
Yeah.
Right. Her name was Maria. Really nice stripper. I liked her. And so, a couple of years go by. Now, Kelly and I, at the time, we would get confused for each other. Like people come up, hey, Kelly. And I'm like, I'm not Kelly. I'm Johnny. We're both, balding gingers. I don't know what you say. But so like a few years later, I go back to race Le Mans and I stay at that same chateau that was owned by this Frenchman named Victor. And Victor's wearing like, and you get back from the track, he'd like, would you like some charcuterie? And yeah, we love some charcuterie. And so you're having a glass with this wine. He's like, Johnny, I remember when you were here the first time with the bimbo. And I'm like, the bimbo? I'm like, what are you talking about? The girl in the pool and she had her top off. I'm like, dude, that had to be Kelly. That had to be Kelly. So, but if you want more ammunition, call me, brother. I'll set you up.
I will. I'm going to for sure. But
yeah.
So, you had a terrific run with Corvette. Obviously, drivers change over the years. You get moved into their SRO program, which was at the time was World Challenge. Now you're in a Cadillac, and you keep racking up wins there. I mean, you won 4 championships in a row on that program. Tell me about that program. What was different between that car and the Corvette? Because it was a front engine car. Was it a similar car or with a different body? Like what was the difference between those two cars?
Yeah, no, that was the CTSV. It was, a little heavier, less aero. And so Cadillac, when they re-entered, racing, doing World Challenge, they did it with the very first, CTSV, and they went out in their first race and they didn't win by a little. They won by a ton. So like Andy Pilgrim had stalled on the grid. Remember that series used standing starts. And in getting back to the front, Andy was putting lap times like 2 seconds a lap faster than Max Angelelli, who wound up winning the race. And SCCA got totally pissed off at him. And so when we came back in, we were heavily restricted that first year. I think I started out the first race at St. Pete. I think we qualified 8. And then as the year went on, they kind of gave us a little bit more till we could be competitive. And I think we finished the year with 2 wins, and second in the championship, not on pace, just on being smart. But then, they kept improving that car. That was a really fun car to race, the CTSV, and was louder than the Corvette. You'd scare people when you'd pull up next to him, the roar of that V8. And it was, at first I was kind of pissed off, to be honest with you, because I really loved racing the Corvette. I built a pretty good fan base there. And you had Le Mans and Sebring, which are 2 of my favorite races. But then getting back to and sharing a car and then going to World Challenge. And now I've got my own car again. I can go in the direction that I want setup wise. And a 50-minute sprint race with a standing start.
Yeah.
I don't think there's anything more fun for a driver than a standing start. I
Yeah.
love standing starts. And so, yeah, we wound up the next year. We won the championship. We won it the next, 3 years after that. One of the cars that they developed at that time was the race car was the ATSV,
Yeah.
which was a 3.8 liter, twin turbo, and great car. Some of really advanced electronics on it. It was stout. Even back then, there wasn't a whole lot of contact in sports car racing. I hate right now that it doesn't seem like anybody can go through a race without hitting anybody.
Yeah.
And but yeah, won the championship. The last one was in 15, and then 16 and 17. I should have won it in 16, but had one race where we had a mechanical, and then 17 was the last year.
Yeah. I mean, you're winning, and then all of a sudden, I'm kind of like, this is what I think happened. Your career kind of goes into a stall mode. The program kind of ends for you. The FIA changes the driver protocol rules. They make this gold, bronze, silver program. I would assume you're a gold or even a platinum based on how many wins you've had. And now you're not a desirable driver to have anymore because everybody wants a silver or a bronze driver. But the problem is a silver and a bronze driver kind of are required to bring money, and you're kind of don't fit into that program, and you're kind of just left hanging in limbo. And I remember talking to you a couple of times, and it really bugged you that you've won so many races. You're one of the winningest drivers in sports car history, but you can't get a ride because you got the wrong license.
Yeah, and you completely hit the nail on the head with that. So, you're a factory guy, you're a platinum, highest level, and you would think that's what everybody should aspire to. Well, then the FIA comes out with, all the rules and stuff like that. Well, platinum guys are guys that get paid. Gold guys, all right, those are super fast guys, professionals. Some of them have to bring money. A lot of them bring money now.
Yeah.
Then you have silver, which is a good amateur, and bronze are, your guys starting out and not as experienced. Luckily for me, I got very lucky because at 50, they allowed you to automatically be downgraded just because you're 50, which I think is stupid because, hey, I think you and I are pretty darn close to being as quick as we always were. So,
well,
yes.
How long, so if you were at platinum, how long, you're a bronze now, you're 61, 62. How long was the process for you to get back to a bronze? And the other issue is, okay, you're a platinum guy, you expect to be paid, and you've downgraded yourself to a bronze, but still expect to be paid. And the problem is, everybody expects now, the landscape of racing now is people, the majority of the field, at least in sports car racing, there's only a very few handful of guys that in sports car racing that are getting paid well, and a lot are bringing a lot of money to the table. There's a lot of young kids in there that are bronzes, silvers, and even golds that are bringing $1 million+ into the team to get that ride. And like you, like myself, like yourself, I don't have $1 million to throw at a team for a 6 or 8 race program. That my accountant would slit my throat if I did that.
Yeah. Well, and so the way the system worked at the time, because they've even changed it, Paul. When I turned 50, I got downgraded to gold.
Yeah.
55 downgraded to silver. Okay, 60 downgraded to bronze, and now they've made it even worse. So now at 55, you get downgraded 60 and 65. So they've added another 5 years to it, and and again, I got totally lucky because I got to race the last 2 years, for a very tiny team in SRO GT3 cars, and I got paid. And but it was only because of my bronze rating.
Yeah.
And what's really interesting, I put a pretty big effort last year into trying to get back to Le Mans. There's only one guy that's done more Le Mans than me, and that's Maston Gregory. He did 16. I've done 15. And so I really wanted to get back there last year. And I'm calling all the European teams, and they're like, Johnny, yes, we would love to have you, but you must bring money. You must bring budget. I'm like, not the guy. Not the guy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's the problem.
So,
That's
and
the
that's where
problem.
you're at.
That's the problem with the current landscape. You and I are now bronze level platinums. Like, we can still go as fast as we've ever gone, outrun any of the guys on the team. So I hope that there's a benefit to that, but to a gentleman guy that who's funding a program that wants to do well. But again, like you get back in the car, you've been out of the car for a couple years, really screwed by the system because of the rating system, and then you get back in with ski and you win another championship last year. That must have felt good, right?
No, that one did feel really good because we were, again, a tiny team, probably about half the budget of everybody else. And we were a show up and race type, team with a car that was brand new to us. You get to a point where, when you've been away, and this, all right, you've been away, and then somebody gives you an opportunity, you enjoy it more because you realize how special it is and how lucky we are to get in a race car. And people that haven't been in race cars, you go to such a cool place in your brain. You just, there's something magical about the rhythm, the sounds, the precision and the competition. And then, this as well as anybody, the feeling you get from, being the quickest, getting a pole, winning a race.
Yeah. Can't, when you haven't done it in a long time, it's a great feel. It's like you're first again,
Yeah. Those feelings you had when you won your first go-kart race. You remember your first win, don't you?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. When you're a little kid, you win that first race, and that ridiculous amount of joy and happiness, it's still there, even though, we're, a little bit older and more experienced, that appreciation for that, intensity of competition.
So you win the championship last year, you're getting ready for this year, and you wake up one morning and your neck's killing you. Basically, you went to the doctor and the guy said, "You're time out here."
Yeah. So my first doctor that I saw here, when he saw my x-ray, was like, "Whoa, dude." The response was like, "I haven't seen a neck like this in a long time." And so he do the MRI, and he's like, "You got to go. We got to fuse you," and all that kind of stuff. And what was disappointing is I had a couple good offers to race this year. Finally got to the point where, I'm like, I can't do it. I just don't have it. And so I'm out at Thermal, and I'm talking to the shop manager there, guy named Alan, and he's like, "Hey man, so what are you racing this year?" And I'm like, "Dude, I'm not. My neck is tweaked." And he's like, "What's wrong?" I explained it to him. He points to his neck, and he had disc replacement.
Yeah.
By some top guy in Beverly Hills, and he gets the doctor to give me a call. I talk to the doctor, and I'm like, "Well, my surgeon back in Atlanta says, you can't do it on guys over 45, and and I'm too wrecked anyway." And so this doctor's like, "Well, I've worked on some guys your age, and one of them actually races cars, and I'll have him give you a call." So about literally 10 minutes later, the guy that owns Mother's car polish, Jim Holloway, calls me up, explains the whole procedure. But like everybody I've spoken to is like 2-3 days later, you're good as new. And so, keep our fingers crossed.
So you're going to spend the rest of this year, you're going to get ready, rehab, and we're going to see Johnny O back trying to go for the 24 Hours of Le Mans again.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I'm not done. I mean, I still want to do it. I do definitely want to get back to Le Mans. And, and here's the thing, and I'm sure you kind of feel the same way. You and I have been so blessed. It's funny, like you mentioned, I wanted my career to, take a path similar to yours or Jimmy's or the guys, that we raced with. I'm so happy. I think God kind of has a plan for all of us, and so happy. I mean, I was 56 years old as a factory driver. That doesn't happen,
Yeah.
very often. But do you ever think about how lucky you and I are? I mean, the fact you're still racing, right? There's nobody from the 80s, brother, that's still racing. I mean, the fact that you and I have been able to keep at it and enjoy the sport, something we're both, so passionate about. We're awfully darn lucky. And
Yeah,
but
like you, when I wasn't racing, even though I was doing TV, my last IndyCar race was when Dan Weldon died, and my parents and my wife at the time were like, "You need to stop. You're going to
yeah.
get hurt. You're in bad equipment." Blah blah blah. I wasn't ready to stop at that point, but I also knew that I wasn't in good equipment either, and now that I'm back to driving, like yourself, that's all I've ever done, and I like the process of driving, even if it's on an amateur level and it's just for fun. I like the process of I got to get up every morning. I got to train. I got to live like an athlete. And I think that's what you like too.
Oh, 100%. And something that you mentioned is when, number one, you got to be in good stuff to win.
Yeah.
You got to be in good stuff to win and to show what you're capable of. Luckily, both you and I, for a lot of our careers, we are in really, really good stuff. But the adjustment to when you wake up January 1st and you're not racing that year, there's anger.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's anger. And even though you were doing the TV, by the way, I miss you doing the TV for IndyCar. You made the show so awesome. So it's good now, but it was
Well,
it was better back
like
then.
like racing, there's always a younger, better looking driver that comes along, and when you get old and you don't have any hair and you're getting a little fat and you don't look as good as some newly out of a ride driver that's slick and looks good and talks well. Maybe I mouthed off a little bit too much. There's 100 guys that want your job, right?
And they'll do it for less money.
Exactly.
But here's the thing, of what you brought, you brought the authenticity of emotion, rather than being politically correct. You stated the truth. And so, and that's why I always appreciated it. But yeah, when you're not racing, when your career comes to an end, it's a hard adjustment. And it's funny because in 2018 or 19, when Dr. Panos passed away, I ran into David Brabham at the memorial, and I was struggling. I'm not gonna lie. I was like, this is really having a hard time. And I'm like, hey man, let me ask you something. How you doing? Not driving. And he's like, let's get together and have a glass of wine after this. You'd be surprised how many guys struggle when it comes to an end. I mean, you find your balance, but it's not an easy thing. It's a very common thing for difficult to walk away. And and I think that's why, and you're probably, in this space as well, getting to do the stuff that you're doing now and all that kind of stuff. When you get that opportunity to get back in a race car and race, it's like being reborn.
Yeah. Well, we're out of time now. It's I mean, you're a legend. Like, I'm going to tell you one thing, brother, but with your credentials, it's you may not know it, but I think you're a 100% locked to go into the Motorsports Hall of Fame with what you've done, being the winningest American driver at Le Mans. It's pretty incredible what you've done, and I'm excited to see what's next for you.
Well, I appreciate it, my friend. And I think we can say the same thing about you. Watching you all those years dominate in IndyCar and your style of driving. And yeah, sorry, Helio, he did beat you that year. And I mean, we did think about it. We both, led incredible lives, and hopefully we got a lot more good years ahead of us.
All right. Thanks, Johnny.